Welcome back to another episode of Mystic Femininity, the sacred space where high achieving women come to soften, awaken, and realign with their divine rhythm of life. I'm your host, Christian Simone, and this episode may feel a little spicy, and not in a taboo spicy, but that it may get into a little bit of some soft spots. And this is important for your growth, for your evolution, and ultimately for you to get to enjoy life at its fullest. Today's episode is going to be anger, grief, and the power that you are suppressing. Because let's be honest, when you have spent decades curating a life that is optically beautiful, you're doing all the right things. But what is often not said, it's very quiet, is that women especially are not provided the space to express without fear of potential shaming, with animosity, and with gaslighting. No one really goes into the process of how to actually feel the hard things, because these hard things are here to teach us and give us lessons that can propel our lives into just the most unfathomable amazement. But in our society, there is a true push to keep you from tapping into your emotions. Your emotions often can direct you, keep you safe, but often they are villainized. In our society, it's, preferably to be a very, very cold bitch. That is seen to be the most highest desirable representation of being a woman. And that is why so many women feel hollow. They feel empty. They're doing everything under the sun, just complete hacks to try to make yourself feel something. But it's because our society has rewarded you to not feel. Push past the feelings, just do the thing. Not understanding that that just continues to widen the disconnection gap that you have with your true feminine essence, and essentially disconnecting you from your source energy. But again, that is done deliberately, because if you are not connected to your source energy, you are more vulnerable and easier to control. And if you're easier to control, then the society can do what it wants to do with you easily because of susceptibility. So I call out in this episode from the start that this may get a little spicy, but again, it is for the ultimate good of the collective, because I firmly believe every woman that begins to own her true essence without apology, without contortion, that means the world will begin to reflect in a way that is healing, rejuvenated, and brilliantly beautiful. So let's get started. Out of the gate, suppression is not just denial. Suppression is a conscious effort to hide a feeling that you have acknowledged, or society has acknowledged and has deemed to be unsafe to express. I know many women who lead families, they lead teams, they carry communities, and have been taught that suppression is a strength. Just not having any emotion is seen as a flex. And this is especially when it comes to anger and grief. These two emotions often get a bad rep, especially anger. Anger is, to me, a very wonderful emotion. It's just like anything, any indicator that, hey, something's off. That's it. But our society does not deem anger acceptable for women, because when women can get angry, some things will start to change, some things will get broken, things will get dismantled. So the more that you can stay suppressed, the more that things can just kind of stay the way they are. However, what is suppressed does not disappear. It waits. It starts to integrate into your body, into your habits, and into your voice. And when I say your voice, I don't necessarily mean the audio that you're hearing from me at this moment, but how you look at the world, your perception, how you look at yourself and say, I'm beautiful, I am intelligent, I am capable, what I desire is attracted to me. There's a certain boldness that comes with those words versus, well, I don't know. Well, I'm fat. I don't have this and I can't have that, or that's for those people, or like there's a certain frailty into that certain lens of perception. So when you suppress these things, it begins to alter essentially your DNA, your essence. It becomes in the physical realm of a chronic exhaustion. You're always tired. But this isn't a tiredness that you can take a nap and recuperate from. This is that deep cellular level exhaustion, which is disconnection. It begins to dull your sense of style, your presence, and your sensuality. So you don't have the desire to look pretty, whatever pretty is to you. You just kind of slovenly off. You don't take care of yourself. And I don't mean in the I need to spend 5K on a maintenance type of thing, but basics. I know that there was a time in my life in which I did just the bare minimum to get by, the very bare minimum. I would look at pictures and would wish and want that for myself. But then because this disconnection altered my perception of self, I felt that those were for other people. And I did not put the time, the effort, the energy, the investment, nothing. And it took some years to begin to dismantle that by the fact that I was able to tap into my emotions and tap into anger. I look at anger, and we will go deeper in as we go through this podcast, but I look at anger as fire. And when I look at fire, fire can keep you warm. It can be a beautiful glow. And it also purifies. When iron is put through the fire, it is purified of anything that shouldn't be there. And then what is left, it's iron in its pure form. And so that is the way I look at fire. Fire can, you put some wood logs in and you set it afire and it keeps you warm. It keeps you nice and toasty. You can make s'mores with it. And so it can provide a means of entertainment, provides a provision of food and nourishment. And that's what I see anger as, if it is used properly. Now, like fire, if it's not used, corralled in a proper way, yes, it can destroy a house. It can destroy land. It can end lives. It can do a lot. But if it is harnessed, not looking at it with fear and trembling, but looking at it from a means of a tool, like anything, it can be a wonderful gift to you. You might even begin to still look together optically, air quotes, polished, but deep down inside, you feel very empty. There is a shadow side of your midlife femininity, and suppressed emotions will dull your radiance. You will not have that glow. And I have been reading on quite a few sites about women who are going through the midlife transition called perimenopause and the true official phase of moving into the crone phase. And many begin to see themselves and they don't recognize the woman that she once was. And many have stated, I don't see her anymore. I feel like I've lost that glow. I've lost that sparkle. And what has happened is now they are seeing the accumulation of constantly suppressing emotions. If you're someone who's super vibrant, but maybe you're in some area that's hyper conservative, or you're in a family that's hyper religious, you are not able to express. And therefore it begins to slowly build, and you're trying to be compliant because this is your family and there's a certain image. And for most people, they're not going to want to just annex their family because of such. But it does begin to eat away at you, and it takes away your radiance. Suppression is a conscious and deliberate effort to prevent and feeling what is needed to be expressed. Anger is often villainized within women because of the impact that it can have on society as a collective. The unbothered vibe of this era, though, is also something that is very odd to me, but is also, it's trendy. It's the whole like dark feminine aesthetic, this cold type of woman. This, for you in your midlife, if you've been living that way and now you're starting to get into this 35s, the 40s, the 50s, you will need to embrace the full totality of you because it is what is needed for you to flourish. And if you've been someone who really hasn't lived the life that you wanted, many women wake up and say, I don't like the life I have. I really don't like kids. I really don't like my spouse. I am disgusted by this person. This is a great opportunity for you to do a second act. If, again, you would use the emotions that you feel, especially anger. Now, moving into the other emotion of grief, which is another one that is extremely scary. And this to me is scary for all individuals, male, female, pal, whatever you consider yourself. Grief is just a very scary emotion because it can feel very suffocating and it's very unstable. People have a hard time, especially in the line of work that I am into. They're very scared to say that they're sad or they're depressed. Like that is a taboo word. Even though mental health is a bit trendier now, on a real everyday person, it's still very much a taboo thing. It's still very scary. And if you're someone who has navigated through those things, one wants to try to rid themselves of it as quickly as possible because of the optics of society and how it's judged. But then two, I think more on the deeper scale is just the overwhelming feeling that it provides. And again, it is something that I have navigated through in my life. And as difficult as it has been, it is probably one of the best gifts that I have encountered in life because it has taught me so much. It's forced me to learn and understand and glean many gems, if you will, in my life. And I think that is something that most people, if they really can maneuver it in a healthy way, it will help you prosper. But emotions, they fuel movement, and then movement requires you to pivot in your reality. And this is why we suppress. If you don't see the full array of emotions as gifts, it will suck you dry. You have to be able to observe them and let those gems come out and then let it move around. It will flow if you acknowledge it. And what you don't acknowledge will always zap you. Now, with anger, we shame it. We often are told that it's unattractive, it's unspiritual, it's too much, and we just tuck it away and violate our own boundaries and our own self. Essentially, when you suppress your emotions, you are essentially not allowing yourself to have your needs met. And then for some, you may feel as though there's no way for you to have those needs met, and so you just essentially try to disconnect from the need altogether. But anger is not a destructive thing. It is a direction for you. It shows you where your energy is being misused, misplaced. It is a map back to your truth. So when we suppress our anger, we do not become better people. We become disconnected people. And that is why you're so brittle, because you are disconnected. It's like you're not living in your true essence, and your true essence is like air, and we must have air to continue living. You will suffocate very fast, but it's on an energetic level. And when you're disconnected, then you start living a version of life that feels more like survival versus embodiment. You check the boxes, you smile, you wave, but your soul is whispering, this isn't it. Now with grief is a sacred release. Grief is terrifying for many women because it feels like loss. Sometimes we've built identities on being the one who holds it all together. And to acknowledge anger makes you acknowledge things, which means you may end up acknowledging that the identity that I am playing in isn't true to me. And if it has been rewarding for you, if you've always been the it girl, you have the life that's always together, your friends always come to you for advice, and you get your ego stroked by that. It does feel very sad that for you to acknowledge and live in a more authentic life, you may have to actually be vulnerable and say that I don't have it all together, and these are areas that I need to work on. Or if you get joy from being in everyone else's business and putting all your energy into that, but not your own. Again, it can feel very sad, but grief is a way to purify and clean out what is no longer working. Grief is not always just about death and tragedy. Grief can arise when our old identity dies. Because for some women, when they go through this midlife area transition, they do begin to grieve the woman they once were. And then there are some who begin to grieve the version of themselves that was never given permission to become, or the version of self that they could never obtain. And that can feel very, very, very jarring. For instance, if you were a woman who desired children, but you are moving into that transition, or maybe you're much further along in your transition, you then have to acknowledge that I'm probably not going to ever have a baby. And if a baby was something that you wanted just deeply, give yourself the grace and the space to grieve, and then begin to hold hope and open space for reimagining a life in which you can give birth, but not maybe into a physical realm of a child, but you are able to give birth to other things. And that is also can be very difficult to navigate. Sometimes we have to just accept and understand that chapters close. So when the version of you that may be the hustler, the pleaser, the girl who needed to be needed fades, grief demands you to be still, which means we often have to reach for distractions because, again, we don't like these emotions. So suppression is high at the mark. So we may begin to reach for things like busyness. We begin to compare. We may become a hater, or we may begin to numb. And I will always go on the record to say that being numb does not make you strong. Being numb shows that you have disconnected something of self and that things are not flowing. It's like if you sit on your feet and you get up and you can't feel your feet feel numb, and then you get up and you feel this rush of pins to your body. That's what happens, but on an energetic level. We may try to short circuit the process, but in doing so, we stay stuck in a loop of stagnation. And I want to kind of give you this as a truth nugget about spirit, which already knows is that grief clears space. It softens the soul so that new life, a real, aligned, and feminine life can take root. Now, how to merge all this together? Let's connect the dots. When we suppress our emotions like anger and grief, we also suppress something that I don't believe we often connect, which is our creativity. We also disconnect and suppress our intuition and our sensuality. So when you say my life is dull, I don't feel like I have spark or glimmer anymore, it's because of this disconnection. And creativity isn't just about being an artist. Creativity is the being able to tap into the intuition, get the download from source energy, and then being able to be the conduit, the transitioner of the spirit realm to the 3D reality. And so when you have disconnected your abilities to be creative, it really is getting dry. It's very much dull. It's giving very dull. And your sensuality, which often gets a name of, being spicy, isn't always about sex. Sensuality often to me is not about sex at all. It is about being super embodied. It is being able to feel. It's being able to taste all the sweetness, all of life in its many, many arrays and phases. So when you suppress, you are blocking your own blessings in a very real way. All those things, your intuition, your creativity, your sensuality, all is what makes you feel feminine. So when you say, I don't feel feminine, those three components is what makes you, it's the feelings that you would get from being that way. So then those are areas that you would want to investigate as to why. Now, you cannot selectively shut down emotions. If you suppress fire, your water will dry up too. You can't stop dreaming. You can stop desiring. You can move through life in a very muted way and then wonder why you don't feel radiant. You can't cut that off. Your emotions come in a full array. And as I mentioned earlier, it is a gift that you really want to take heed to. I always say radiance isn't your highlighter. It is your integration. When you are open to embracing yourself, it is not about the routine. It is not about the products. It's not about any of the optics. If anything, if your goal is to be beautiful aesthetically, the best that you can do is invest in your inner world, because your outer world is nothing but a reflection of your inner world. So yes, you can wear all the designer outfits, wear all the designer perfumes, and adorn yourself with jewels and beautiful perfumes. However, that does not make you feminine, and it does not make you glow. We can do all the things, and there still will be something very subtle that is missing, that just doesn't hit until you integrate those areas. So I'm going to ask you this as we begin to wrap up. What have you been suppressing? What emotion have you labeled as inconvenient, ladylike, or too messy? And I will go further and say, what emotion have you accepted that society has deemed inconvenient, unladylike, or too messy? And what might shift if you let those emotions come forth? What can those emotions teach you? Now, they're not going to control you, but they can help free you. Midlife is not a time for you to shrink from your power. It is a time to reclaim it, to gather the lost pieces and become whole again. You do not have to do it alone. In fact, you were never meant to. In this episode, I'm hoping that something has started to stir in you, and you're ready to stop suppressing, and you're ready to start embodying. I invite you to book a midlife glow up session with me. It is completely free and is designated and designed to be a very soft and supportive space where we can explore what keeps you stuck and help kind of create a path back to your radiance. I'm not here on any performative beauty, but an embodied elegance. Not perfection, but a deep divine presence. You can book a session. The link will be in the podcast description. Now, your shadow is not your shame. It is a sacred teacher. In the book, Eat in Light of the Moon, towards the end of the book, there is a story that is shared in regards to how it's depicted as some scary underwater area of a person. But essentially, this illustration was nothing more than the shadow. And there was so much fear and anger and just complete separation when it came to acknowledging the shadow. And the shadow will take you out until you acknowledge it. And then once you acknowledge it, you begin to see that it was never scary. It was never ugly. It was never critical or hard. What the shadow demands is that you acknowledge it, because by acknowledging the shadow, you are acknowledging your full holistic self. Many women in our society have been conditioned to reject themselves, reject most parts of themselves in order to move around in society. It can be kind of scary to move around in society as a fully integrated being. It can be very, very uncomfortable. So we do what we can to self-protect, which I say these things in not a judgmental way, but to truly acknowledge what is. And coming back to yourself means embracing the shadow, loving your shadow, appreciating what it teaches you. Because again, you are divine. You are connected to source because you are. In this experience of living in a 3D reality, the way that you are able to enjoy life in its full totality is by you acknowledging you and your full totality. When you learn how to move with your shadow and not run from it, everything changes. And until next time, be gentle with yourself. You're already becoming the woman your younger self dreamed of. Stay soft, stay sovereign, and I'll see you in the next episode.